Chapter 3 Mud. Ploip, plip, plop. Oip, 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 oip. Tin, tin, tin. For a month, the clouds spilled. Mountains slid into valleys. Houses wallowed in shallow lakes. And the rocks and dirt that held fast to the train tracks disappeared. Father prepared to leave for work to repair the railroad and would be gone for several weeks. From a window, Naphtali and Rodolfo watched him walk from the house to the platform to wait for the train. As the workers arrived, they huddled around him. Father does not have a sour face today, said Naphtali. He looks happy and nice. He is happy, said Rodolfo. He is the boss, and everyone must follow his orders. But they like him, said Naphtali. See how he jokes, and the men laugh? Rodolfo shook his head. You would laugh at his jokes too, if you needed your job. Father has many friends, insisted Naphtali. When he is home, our table is always crowded. Ah, yes, the great Jose Reyes. The more people at his table, the more important he feels. But he passes out invitations like overripe plums. Rodolfo's face twisted with disgust. Better for us if he stays in the forest. Why? Naphtali, are you not miserable? Rodolfo held up one hand and began tapping each finger in sequence. We cannot sit in the salon. We cannot eat unless our hands have been scrubbed raw. We cannot make noise. We cannot sing. We must think as he thinks. Rodolfo's shoulders sagged. We can only be what he wants. Even Mamadre is a servant in his presence. We are all at his mercy. And as you get older, it gets worse. No, it will not get worse, because I will not be stubborn like you. You think it is my fault? And that if you are obedient, you will grow up and be his pride and joy? Rodolfo smirked. Buena suerte. Good luck to that. When you are my age, you will see. Outside, the whistle blew and the train pulled away. The boys watched until the caboose disappeared into the leafy cavern. I wish I could go into the forest, said Naphtali. It is a long ride and not that much fun, said Rodolfo. Why are you so eager? I want to see everything, said Naphtali. The tall pines and parrots and beetles and eagles. And Father says there is a bird in the forest that tells the future. Rodolfo nodded. The chukao bird. If you hear it call on your right side, it is a good omen and means fortune and happiness. If you hear it call on your left, it is a warning and means bad luck and disappointment. They say the chukao bird does not lie. You will hear it before you ever see it, though. It is a very shy bird. I want to see the chukao bird, and I want to see the other father, the nice one. Rodolfo shook his head and walked from the room. Naphtali whispered, I want to see everything. The days became weeks. The relentless rain forced everyone to stay indoors, and the mud prevented any wagon from maneuvering the streets. Eventually, Uncle Orlando could not get to his office, so he came to Naphtali's house to write his newspaper articles at the kitchen table. Uncle Orlando was Mamadre's younger brother and a taller version of her, with the same white face and brown, puppy-like eyes. Naphtali loved to watch him work. He set up his own workplace at the table next to his uncle, imitating everything he did. While Uncle Orlando wrote, Naphtali copied words from books. If Uncle Orlando looked up a word in a dictionary, Naphtali did the same. When Uncle Orlando tucked his pencil behind his ear, rose from the table, and paced back and forth, Naphtali shadowed him. The rain did not surrender, and neither did Naphtali. On the fourth afternoon of Uncle Orlando's stay, Lorita played with her dolls on the kitchen floor. Rodolfo hummed as he did his homework, and Mamadre made potato turnovers for dinner. At one end of the table, amid his papers and books, Uncle Orlando wrote. Naphtali stood next to him, leaning closer and closer. Nephew, I am not sure there is room for both of us in this chair unless you sit in my lap. Are you going to watch me write every single sentence? Asked Uncle Orlando. Naphtali put his finger on Uncle Orlando's paper. What is that word? That word is Mapuche. They are the indigenous people who live in Araucania, our neighbors. Naphtali scooted his own piece of paper closer and copied the word. I suppose that if this keeps up, I will have to make you my partner someday. Naphtali smiled and nodded vigorously. Well then, if you're going to assist me in my work, I will need to adjust the sound of your annoying breathing. Uncle Orlando reached over and pulled Naphtali into his lap, tickling and wrestling with him. Soon they were rolling on the floor. Rodolfo jumped up and pounced on them. Lorita squealed as they moved dangerously close to her dolls. The boys tumbled apart, laughing. Mamadre stood there with her hands on her hips. I see that the dreariness of the rain has made us all need a diversion, she said. Enough of sitting in this one room. Come, I will read to you in the salon. But we are not allowed in the salon, Naphtali reminded her. Mamadre smiled and raised her eyebrows. Today you are allowed. While Mamadre and Uncle Orlando made hot chocolate, Naphtali and Lorita and even Rodolfo giggled as they dragged blankets from their rooms to the salon. Soon they were all snuggled beneath the blankets and sipping the warm drinks. Mamadre picked up a book, cleared her throat, and began a story, transporting them to a land of elves and princesses. When the story ended, Lorita flung off her coverlet, jumped up, and skipped in a circle. I am a princess! I am a princess! Rodolfo teased. You do not look like a princess. Uncle Orlando looked at Mamadre. No, she does not. Can we do something about that? Mamadre smiled, rose from her chair, and kneeled at the giant brass-fitted trunk strapped with oak. None of them had ever seen the contents of the trunk. Naphtali looked at Rodolfo, who smiled and shrugged. Lorita pressed her hands over her mouth in anticipation. Mamadre lifted the heavy curved lid. The smell of musty clothes and cedar drew Naphtali closer. Mamadre took out a stack of folded dresses, a wool coat, and a fur hat, which she had handed to Naphtali. Further down, Mamadre found a lace petticoat and a filmy scarf. Lorita quickly pulled the petticoat over her clothes. As she twirled around, Mamadre lifted out a guitar. Uncle Orlando retrieved it and began to tighten and tune the strings. Mamadre found a top hat, which she presented to Rodolfo. While Mamadre tied Lorita's scarf, Naphtali stepped to the trunk. He peered over the edge. At the bottom, he saw a bundle of letters and postcards, tied with a satin ribbon. How many words have been saved inside? He leaned forward, reached down, grabbed a bundle, and fell in head first. Mamadre spun around. Naphtali! His muffled voice came from the bottom of the trunk. I am here! When Uncle Orlando lifted him up and set him on the sofa, Nephthali still held the bundle. Each letter had been opened from the top of the envelope, the flap still sealed with wax and stamped with the impression of a heart. On the top letter, someone had written the word love above the seal. Mamadre took the bundle from him, put it back inside, and carefully closed the trunk. Nephthali, the lid would have fallen on your head, or your hands. And for what? Some old letters and cards from relatives we do not even know? Promise you'll never open this trunk. Nephthali looked wistfully toward it. I promise. Uncle Orlando strummed the guitar. Nephthali, come stand next to me. As my partner, how do you think we should proceed? Nephthali looked up. With the song? My sentiments exactly, he said, propping one foot on a chair and the guitar on his knee. Rodolfo, will you honor us? No one in the family can sing as you can. He began to play. Rodolfo hesitated and looked from Mamadre to Uncle Orlando for reassurance. Your father is not here, Rodolfo. Then it would be a favor to me. Rodolfo turned back to Mamadre. She nodded. Something deep inside of Nephthali wanted Rodolfo to sing at the top of his lungs. He clapped wildly. Yes, he said. Rodolfo smiled and put on the top hat. He began softly at first. Libiamo, libiamo, Nelietti calici ce la bellezza infiora. Let us drink from the goblets of joy adorned with beauty. He stopped and looked to each of them for reassurance. Uncle Orlando nodded. Continue. I know that song. From La Traviata. But sing louder and faster. It is a song of great spirit. He strummed the opening chords. Rodolfo began again. Mamadre and Lorita danced. Nephthali stood up, tapped his foot, and clapped to the beat. Lorita and Mamadre waltzed faster and faster, both of them laughing. Nephthali could not take his eyes from Rodolfo's face, which had lost all traces of anger and sullenness. His voice was deep and rich and operatic. Rodolfo opened his arms wide and sang. In this chapter, everyone gets to sort of do something that they're not allowed to do when Dad is home, when the father is home. They get to open the trunk, and Rodolfo gets to sing since his father is gone. So my question to you is, what is one thing you would do at home if your parents didn't find out? So what would you do if you could do anything at home and your parents wouldn't find out? In the story, Rodolfo gets to sing. Lorita gets to play dress up. And Nephthali finds his letters, all in the trunk, and they seem to have a great time. So, right on Seesaw, short answer to what is one thing you would do at home if your parents didn't find out. Please make sure it's school appropriate, and that you're going to write it on Seesaw, so it is able to be seen by other people. So this is not necessarily a secret. This is just something that you really want to do that maybe you think, and it should be something like singing, playing different games, doing something that is maybe a little, what your parents would say, dangerous, but it is not a secret and it is school appropriate.